Good morning, YouTube family. How are you? Happy Sunday. It's Reverend Wendy with the Community of Compassion, joining you today for our weekly Spirit Talk. As usual, it's always good to be with you. It's always good to reconnect, to get together, to talk with each other, and to just get some inspiration, some motivation, and some encouragement to get us through the rest of the week. So with that being said, how was your week? Last weekend, I had an opportunity to go spend some time in nature. So if any of you all are familiar with the Washington, D.C. area, there's this great spot about 2 hours south of here in Virginia called the Shenandoah Mountains. And it's just replete with places to go hike and to get some solace in. There's a Luray Caverns if you just want to go touring. And of course, in spaces like that, in nature, it gives you a great opportunity for social distancing because there's not very many people out there. So it was just a really good and relaxing weekend. So I was unable to log on with Wi-Fi and be with you last week, but here I am. I'm back this week to encourage everybody, and thank you so much for joining me. Today, I want to talk just a little bit. I'm excited because next week, next Saturday, I'll be helping to coordinate a basic income march. Now, for those of you who may not be aware of what basic income is or universal basic income, that is a plan that has been brought about over the course of our history that involves putting money, direct cash payments, into the hands of those who need it without condition, without qualifying per se, without means testing. But Dr. King and others spoke of a guaranteed annual income being something that we as a rich nation, the richest nation in the world, should be able to provide for our citizens in an effort for us to be able to have an income floor to stand on. Now, I'm talking about that at the beginning of my talk today because it is spiritual in nature. Thinking of equality, thinking of equity, thinking of people starting from the same place and being valued the same is very scriptural. For those of you who may follow politics, which I'm guessing that those of you who are following me may know a little bit about politics, know that I was a member of the staff of Andrew Yang. I worked on his spiritual and cultural outreach and had a wonderful time doing that. But it was actually Andrew's introduction of universal basic income that drew me to the campaign in the first place. Because the way that he was speaking about it in an article that I read, introducing him back in February of 2018, talked about that very thing. How are we not helping the poor? How are we not helping those who are oppressed? So many people have lost their jobs. So many people are struggling from day to day. We as a country seem to have lost a sense of our humanity, and therefore we're not taking care of each other like we can and like we should be doing. And so as I'm reading this, and he talked to that, not being the be all to end all, but certainly being a step to that, I thought, wow, I like what he's saying. I like where he's going with this. And the universality of it was really what I appreciated, because we do have a lot of programs in place in this country and in this nation to help our fellow man in times of need. However, you and I both know that those are not always applied universally, that there's a number of steps, there's a number of criteria, there's a number of details that everyone must meet in order for them to qualify for a particular amount. And it can get you to a place where you just get frustrated and you give up because you feel like, if I try to qualify to get some assistance that may help me, that may also disqualify me from getting a job so that I can help myself, if you will. And so it's sort of a catch-22 that we set up in the system, and it's not fair. And it doesn't show grace to people who need it in times of need. And that's what I'm talking about today, is our graciousness, amazing grace. Where is the grace that we that we are supposed to be showing one another. And grace has a number of definitions, but today's talk is about amazing grace and us getting back to showing and sharing the grace of God toward one another and with one another. And that can certainly be done through implementing a universal basic income. That is certainly one of those means. And so when I talk about grace, many of you have heard the familiar hymn "Amazing Grace." That's actually kind of what I was playing when I first tuned in today. A lot of people, when they think about grace, they think about unmerited favor. They think about, oh, things that I got that I didn't deserve, or things that I didn't get that I should have deserved. And so when people think about grace, they think about it in terms of, oh, I'm just so blessed that I received something without necessarily having to put any effort toward it. Or I thank God that God doesn't hold things against me, that God's grace is sufficient and it overlooks my faults, and it still offers love to me, and it still offers acceptance to me despite myself, despite the wrongdoings, despite my shortcomings. Grace still says I am worthy. Grace is the power also to do what God's called you to do and to be who God's called you to be. So in addition to grace being the favor of God and God looking out for us and granting us sort of favors and making us feel as though we are worthy and that we are qualified for God's grace despite who we are, grace also is God's power in us to do what God's called us to do and to be what God's called us to be. So many of us are in positions, perhaps working, or maybe you're even in positions in your family where it puts a lot of pressure on you, but you feel like you have a certain level of power to be able to handle that position or to be able to take that position with your family. So grace is a power. Grace is something that operates separate and apart from our own physical strength. So let me give you an example. Have you ever, seen movies or sci-fi movies where you've seen heroes with superhuman strength lift a car off of a person? Maybe the car fell on the person and someone swooped in, lifted the car up so that that person could live. I'm sure we've seen those kinds of things. We've also maybe even heard of those in real life, where someone just acting out of sheer grace, God gifted them a grace to be able to lift a large object off of a human so they could live. So that grace was not in their own human strength, but something supernatural gave them extra ability to do something, to achieve something, to create something, and to be something. That also is amazing grace. If you feel like you've had sort of a supernatural power that allows you to be able to have more patience, that allows you to be more creative, that allows you to mediate between different sides, that allows you to do. All of those things are empowered too by the grace of God. And so today I want us to think about that in terms of what then, if harnessing the grace of God within us, can we accomplish? So if we together harness that power and we harness that grace together and we turn it toward one another and we turn it toward those who maybe don't have the strength right now to stand up, who maybe don't have the strength to pull the boot off of their neck. Some people talk about pulling up by our bootstraps, and we know that not everybody has boots. Some of us feel like a boot is on our neck and we're not able to even look up to see what opportunities there are. But our collective grace together, by supporting measures like a universal basic income, can serve to help infuse some supernatural power into folks who are feeling powerless right now. That's what grace does. When we harness what we're able to do and we share it amongst ourselves and we share it out with others, it can make powerful things happen. The grace of God has qualities that embolden our faith. It is redemptive. It is God's power. It is God's activity. It is God's pardon. Grace is God's nature. Now, like I said in the beginning, I do like to look up definitions. Grace can be defined as unmerited or undeserving favor of God to those who feel like they're under condemnation. But it is also a power that allows us to access God and to access God's strength that can come into handy when we've reached the limit of our own human strength. In our government, I feel like we have reached the limit of our own human capacity to feel the pain of other people. I don't know what's happening in our government that we can stand by and see so many people struggling and so many people having a tough time making it from day to day and not want to do something. There should be something on the inside of us driving us beyond polls, beyond reputation, beyond our next race, beyond politics and parties, and more toward humanity and what's in need in this moment and what we have the power to do. Grace is available. You just have to tap into it. We have to tap into it. It's so easy to just go on our own human strength and in our finite mind and think, oh my goodness, I can't go another step. I can't live another day. We can't survive another moment with things the way they are. And that's a very real human feeling. What I would suggest, though, is that it's God's grace that is allowing us to continue even when we feel like we can't. So God's grace gives us the power to do things that we don't think we can do. So I say to those in government and around us, if there's something that you don't think you can do for whatever reason, God's grace is available for you to be able to do it. You just have to tap into it. And God's grace is not worried about what other people might think. God's grace is not worried about, again, how this is going to look in your district per se. God's grace is about, are you taking care of those who cannot take care of themselves? I am giving you power to share with those who don't feel they have any power in this moment. How are we going about doing that, and how are we assisting? Folks, it's critical time. We have to pull together and, like I said, just harness all that we can to help those around. Everything is happening. It seems like every week I get on here and I talk about something else that has, that has transpired that is just hard to understand. And I just pray fervently right now for the fires that are ravaging the West right now, for California and for Oregon. We're thinking of you in this moment. God's grace is sufficient in that I am praying that you have the strength to go to higher ground, I'm asking for grace, supernatural grace for the firefighters, for those who are out there trying to battle these fires. God, help them to be able to put them down and help put them out, and help that as many homes can be saved as possible. It is a month, it's something. And all of the things that happen are still falling on the backdrop of the pandemic. And so, folks, all I can say is we've got to hold on to each other. It's almost like being in the middle of 8 perfect storms and trying to figure out what can we hold on to that's not going to be pulled out from under us. I get it. And so, that being said, a universal basic income might assist in some of these situations. A universal basic income, which is a direct cash payment to people, regardless of their situation, regardless of their circumstances, would be a tremendous help to so many right now. It is unfathomable to me that we are watching people suffer day after day after day in various places and in various ways, and our hearts are not breaking to the point that we are not walking around on the street just putting money in people's hands. Money doesn't answer all things, but it certainly makes things a lot easier to handle. And so our government instead is mired down in this, I don't know what it is, confusion, personality conflict, election time, all of these things that are playing a role in them being unable to access the grace of God and do what needs to be done in this moment to help our people. Our people need to be helped. Basic income is one of the ways to do that. Next week, we're going to be highlighting that. There's over 45 cities around the world who are going to be doing basic income marches or demonstrations. We here in DC are going to do a demonstration in a sense that the pandemic is still real. So we're not doing a physical march. We're going to socially distance and gather at a common spot in DC near the Housing and Urban Development offices, because we want to emphasize evictions, which is another thing that's happening in our world right now. Here in DC, between April and July, there were nearly 2,000 evictions filed. 2,000 evictions filed for families to be able to be taken out of their homes because they weren't able to pay their rent, mostly because they lost jobs, loss of income. So this kind of spiral effect that's been happening as a result of the pandemic is causing catastrophic problems all over the country. And universal basic income may have helped some folks be able to stay in their homes and not face an eviction. So we're going to focus our efforts in DC on calling upon our leaders to look at the things that a universal basic income could prevent, and making that case. If we can make the moral case for universal basic income and continue to hone in on that while also providing numbers and providing data, I think that we will be able to get a universal basic income passed in my lifetime. That is my hope. And so today, amazing grace is available to each and every one of us. And all I'm asking is that each of us tap into the grace that's on the inside of us. When I think of the grace of God, I think of steadfast love. I think of compassion. I think of mercy and unconditional acceptance that is unlike human love. Grace is the way that Jesus treated persons, accepting those who were considered outcasts. Grace is the unconditional love of God for us. And we must accept this grace in a special way so that we can then administer that grace to others. Friends, let's do what we can to support those in need, to tap into the amazing grace of God, to share it with our friends, to share it with our family, to share it with those in need, and to compel those in leadership to tap into their grace as well, so that they can hear the cries of the people and know that we do have the ability to take care of those in need. Thank you so much for joining in today. God bless you. Have a great and wonderful week. Hi, Jen. Thank you so much for tuning in as usual. Hope you had a wonderful walk this morning. Just want to close this out in prayer and wish you all the best. Gracious God, we thank you for your grace. We thank you that it is sufficient. God, we thank you that the grace of God is stirring up not only on the inside of us, but on the inside of our leadership, so that they too can begin to move beyond what's popular and do what is necessary. God, they can do this. All they have to do is remember and be reminded that that strength to be able to move beyond what people think and to do what you've called them to do is available and present. God bless us in this day and bless us in this week. It's in all of your holy names we pray. Amen. Thank you again for joining me. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I got my 200th subscriber this week. I'm so excited. Yeah. Yay! I'm so, still relatively new to this YouTube thing. So I was very excited. Alan Wilkins, if you're out there, you were my 200th subscriber. Thank you so much, brother. I'm going to have to give you some kind of 200th subscriber something. I'll think of something, but you're my Yang Gang Fitness brother, and I appreciate all of your support and each and every one of you. If you who don't watch today, if you share it, if you come back later on in the week, leave a comment. Would love to interact with you. Thank you so much, and have a great and wonderful Sunday.